Hello, and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly hangout where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page. As usual, I'm your host, John Ruark, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in good old Fairfax, Virginia. Moving it on to Robert Johnson.
Hey guys, Robert Johnson, Worshipful Master of Waukegan Lodge number 78 in Waukegan, Illinois, and the host of the Whence Came You Masonic podcast.
Thank you, Robert. Juan Sepulveda.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Juan Sepulveda, and I am a member of Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
Excellent. Thank you for joining us. And last but not least for now, Jason Richards.
Hey everybody, my name is Jason Richards, and I'm the Junior Warden of Acacia Lodge number 16 in good old Clifton, Virginia.
Good old Jason here from good old Clifton. Excellent. Since there's no Masonic news really to talk about tonight, let's skip back to you, Jason, for the MMQOT. So, lead us away.
Alrighty then. Let's see. Last week's question was, during the early era of American Masonry, there was a lot of disarray. This was especially true in the high-grade Masonic degrees. Within the Knights Templar, there was an attempt to bring chaos to order. The Grand Encampment of the United States of America was the brainchild of these two prominent Masons, and this well-known New York politician was its first Grand Master. Your question from last week was, who were these famous Masons? This is a bit of a tricky one, but the three Masons were Thomas Smith Webb, Henry Fowle, and DeWitt Clinton, former governor of New York. And we didn't have nearly as many people who answered that correctly last week as the week before, but those who did answer correctly from TMR fame were Christopher Croteau, Christopher Dorset, David Horlacher, Lou Bedford, and Jonathan Primo. And then there were a couple bonus questions, too. The Grand Encampment of New York was intimately involved in the creation of the National Grand Encampment, which was closely associated with this Scottish Rite group. And we're talking about the Scottish Rite Consistory. And then we've got a double secret bonus question. Nick just went off the deep end at this point. Which famous Freemason sailed with the first Dutch Grand Master of the Grand Encampment? And that famous Freemason was none other than Marquis de Lafayette.
Awesome.
Wee.
Hey, speaking
So
of
congratulations. Yeah, go ahead.
the Nick Johnson off the deep end, and in fact, literally this past week, Nick Johnson, introduce yourself and get ready for this week's MMQOT.
All right. Well, my name is Nick Johnson. I'm a past master of Corinthian Lodge number 67 in Big Time Farmington.
Okay. Do you want to pick up where Jason left off and start?
He's doing such a marvelous job.
Better
it's
late
up to
than
you.
never, Nick.
Oh,
All right. So this week's question on Masonic Monday question on Tuesday is none other than many ethnic fraternal organizations were formed during the golden age of fraternalism. This fraternal organization was formed in Minneapolis in the late 19th century. Originally, it was to be named after the writer of the de facto national anthem from the country of origin of the immigrant founders, but was changed to this, the title of a different de facto national anthem from the same country. What was this fraternal organization? When you've got the answer, send it along with your name, lodge, and Grand Lodge jurisdiction to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Remember, send it to masonicmonday@gmail.com. Don't forget to include your lodge name and number. Do not post it on Facebook.
and don't forget the hashtag TMRMMQ.
Oh yeah, there's that too. But you can forget the hashtag if you just don't put it on Facebook.
Because Nick, what will happen if they put it on Facebook?
Gargamel will capture all the Smurfs and feed them to his cat. Do not allow the Smurfs to be fed to Gargamel's cat.
I'd actually pay
Back
to
to you
see
guys.
that.
You know,
But
they didn't have a Mason Smurf though. They had a Carpenter Smurf.
That's true.
They should have
And
had
just
a Mason.
one lady Smurf.
Not touching
Just point that out.
40 football.
she was a co-Smurf.
Co-Smurf. Alrighty then. Without further ado, the topic for tonight is York Rite 101. This was a request we've had from many of you viewers. We did do a Scottish Rite 101 early on, and everyone's like, where's the love for York Rite? Well, tonight's your night. We are going to cover a high-level overview of what the York Rite system is and how it operates and how it's established, and really just give it the broad brush because we may or may not have some special guests coming on in future episodes. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more.
Or will we?
It's a Masonic secret. So I know that Nick has been dying for this as well because Nick is super York Rite Mason. So I'm going to let Nick lead us off with the high-level overview of the York Rite system, where it came from, and so on and so forth.
Sure. The York Rite, it depends on where you are, but for the most part, the York Rite isn't a rite at all. I know. Right away, I'm starting off with something. But, okay, so in the United States, and this is not going to be the same for everywhere else, but in the United States, there are three separate, slightly interdependent bodies. Those would be the Royal Arch Chapter, the Cryptic Council, and the Commandery of Knights Templar. And all of them sort of kind of function together. But, I should say, the Cryptic Council doesn't exist everywhere, as it sometimes... See, this whole thing is all very confusing. So I will try and boil it down into a very confusing mush. So the first body is the Royal Arch Chapter. And for the most part, it consists of 3 to 4 degrees, and that would be the Mark Master, Past Master, Most Excellent Master, and Royal Arch. And those were put together in like a greatest hits CD for the United States. And you can thank our pal Thomas Smith Webb, who also was famous for bringing over the Prestonian lectures to us, for creating that system. Now, in other places, the Mark and the Royal Arch are conferred in 2 separate bodies, or sometimes the Mark is conferred in the same body, or in some places, there's actually a lodge that has the ability to confer all of them. So, as you can tell, the York Rite, unlike the Scottish Rite, is confusing because it came from a huge, wide net of degrees. They were shoved together into weird packages and then presented to the Masons, and because Masons love higher degrees, we just ate it up. And so that's kind of like the summary is, in the United States we like to package things, and that's what it is. So,
well, Nick, you have to be a little bit more fair. The York Rite isn't that crazy as far as it's how it came together, right? Because the Scottish Rite is kind of the same thing. There's four bodies within the Scottish Rite too.
Yeah. Well, they kind
talk about the council too. Or?
Oh, sure. Well, it depends. Now, if you're in the state of Virginia, these degrees are conferred within the chapter, and there's a reason for that. Is that originally the cryptic degrees would be conferred within the under a charter of another body. So normally it was a chapter. Sometimes it would even be a lodge. So in Virginia, they've maintained that completeness within their capitular rite. And so the cryptic degrees, I should kind of explain now. The chapter is kind of a continuation or a building off of the third degree.
What's a chapter?
Ooh, good question. A chapter is okay, so it's a combination of, it's like I don't know. a body of Royal Arch Masons. Honestly,
instead of a
Royal
lodge,
Arch Lodge.
it's a Royal Arch Lodge.
Royal Arch Lodge. There you go. And it's chosen as chapter because it's chapter meaning the head, as in the top, right? And so essentially, back in England, even now, the Royal Arch is considered the completion. Again, in quotations, the completion of the third degree. Now, if you just saw the third degree and you never went anywhere else, you'd be complete. But if you saw the Royal Arch, you would see a completion of a story, but not necessarily the completion of the same story. More confusion. But so, I know I'm making this far more complicated than it needs to be, but
So what's beyond the cryptic degrees there, Nick?
Oh, what's beyond the cryptic degrees? Those would be the commandery degrees, which actually, oddly enough, have the most semblance of fitting together. Those would be the Order of Red Cross, the Order of Malta, and the Order of the Temple. And these are actually not degrees; they're more orders. And what they are is a Sure. An order is essentially you're being conferred with a knighthood. And so, when you have like an Order of the Garter, Order of the Thistle, something like that, that's a knighthood. And so these impart a figurative knighthood, a speculative knighthood upon seekers of these. And they're a Christian order. I mean, in terms of that, they're thematically chivalric and follow a Christian theme. But there's a lot of universal themes within those orders. So.
Okay, so another explanation I've heard to kind of cover the York Rite side is that the Scottish Rite system, I don't know if we covered it during the episode, but it actually originated from France. And so any of the European and French kind of degree system had a different first, second, third degree, and then all those other enumerated degrees followed a different storyline there that built on the Scottish first 3 degrees. So in America, we normally have the York Rite as the extension of the York degree system. Is that a fair assessment, Nick?
Yeah. Well, what happened was, the Knights Templar, and I should start with them just because it's a little bit different, and they're actually sort of kind of interrelated with the Scottish Rite in terms of where they came from. But originally, what knight named Chevalier Ramsay, who was actually Chevalier Ramsay, he was a Scottish Mason, and he was the tutor of the pretender, what would it be, the Bonnie Prince Charles. And so he supposedly had written an oration that said that we, Freemasons, are related to Templars, and the Templars had hidden themselves within our ranks. This theme was then picked up by a man named Baron von Hunt, who then took that and created what was called the Rite of Strict Observance. And then within that, you had the between what would be the preceptory or the Knights Templar encampments, which are within the York Rite, and then the other side branched off into the Scottish Rite. And so those are actually related. They come from the same pond of origin. The cryptic degrees are kind of a toss-off of the Morin, I think, rituals, or one of the Scottish Rite guys, and if you look at them, they're very similar in focus to the other Scottish Rite degrees. And then the chapter degrees are very related to the lodge. They're very, if you go into a chapter and you look at the degrees outside of the most excellent master degree, they're almost indistinguishable in terms of what you're looking at. So each of them, that's why the York Rite is kind of a confusing thing, is that it's
because of
it's
like
a
the
huge
mechanics
ball.
of it, or
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah, well, it's that they came from a bunch of different places. The Scottish Rite, for the most part, came from a set of 25 degrees, and then it was expanded out, and everybody can kind of trace back A little bit, and I'm sure that the Facebook people are probably yelling at me because I don't know that much about Scottish Rite, but at least from what I understand from the history is that the degrees themselves, they would get changed and reverted and moved around, but for in all intents and purposes, the same 25 are the same 25. But in the York Rite, they were grabbing a couple degrees here. These would all be under the charter of a lodge. Then they dump them. Then they pick up some new ones and they dump those. And, it was very, very wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey. So.
Stuff. Well, interestingly enough, I mean, the Royal Arch degree is still relatively old when it comes to degrees, just because Mackey went ahead and said it himself, saying the original degrees of Masonry are the Enter Apprentice, Fellowcraft, and Master Mason to include the Holy Royal Arch. So
that's one of the reasons why we have that in Virginia, because when the Virginia Grand Lodge was established, that they actually wrote that into their constitution to say that it is the Master Mason degree to include the Royal Arch. So we do not in Virginia consider the York Rite to be, or at least the Royal Arch, to be an appendant body. We call it a concordant body.
Interesting.
There are people that get really wound up around the axle if you call it an appendant body. It's not an appendant body. According to Virginia, it is concordant to the Master Mason degree.
Neat. So, Nick, fun fact question. Let's see if people pick up on this next week. You can ask. How many times have you been knighted?
Oh, man. All right, hold on.
Orders.
1, 2, 3,
if he has to
4,
count,
5, 6, 7, 8. I'm thinking 9.
9.
So there you go.
9 times.
9 times, yeah. They might as well just tape the sword right to my shoulder because it's so much easier than
So we should call you Sir Johnson.
Yeah. Or sad.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Yeah.
So I think all of us on the panel are at least companions of the Royal Arch. Is that a true statement? Okay, I think that's where we left off. What for the other guys? What have you got the most out of the Royal Arch side of Masonry? Why did you join? What was your favorite degree there, without giving too much away? That kind of stuff.
So I have to say the Mark Master degree is one of my favorite degrees in the Royal Arch, just because of the idea of being able to put your own artistic stamp on your work.
You get to draw.
You get to with the Mark Master. The idea is operative Masons when they would hew and set their stones. They would actually mark their work with a given mark or imprint that would basically be like an artist's signature to their work. And as part of the Royal Arch system of degrees, you actually get to create your own imprint or signature, which is really, really cool. And
we call that a mark,
I think,
right?
Yeah, we call that a mark.
Very cool.
I have to agree for myself that really left a profound impression on me. It really.
I see what you did there.
It was good work. I enjoyed it mostly because through the whole thing, I'm thinking of the actual operative Mason. It really made me think of not just the pride that you have in your work to market, but the responsibility that comes with that action. So I was drawing all kinds of parallels with the type of things that I do. My signature is not just me saying, hey, look what I did. It's also me saying, you know what, I'm responsible. I stand behind what I have done. So those are lessons that I think were important that jumped out at me during the Mark Master degree.
So I think I'll add to what Nick said earlier, and also join with you guys. I really enjoy the Mark Master degree, and I think it's awesome that in England, I know Nick will correct me, that there is a Grand Lodge of Mark Masters. So
Yes.
it's its
Yeah.
own Grand Lodge, it's its own order, its own body that's got its own establishment and hierarchy. So they treat that degree as such a, I wouldn't say solemn thing compared to anything else, but at least it's its own body because of the importance they place on it.
Well, and in Scotland, they actually confer the Mark Master within the lodge, and it's kind of
The
interesting.
Blue Lodge, the symbolic
It-
lodge.
Yep, and what's really interesting is that what they'll do is they have this coin trading. I mean, it's no secret, but everybody kind of gets their own mark penny, right? And I mean, essentially it's this memento that you get to take with you from the chapter. And what's really interesting is I have actually traded my chapter pennies that I have here for mark tokens with Scottish Brothers, and it's just amazing. I mean, every single lodge there, so that's thousands of lodges, will have their own mark tokens that have whatever that lodge is famous for. So I have one from Lodge Monroe, I think, and it's the castle that's behind there. I have one from South Korea, from the Republic of Korea, and it's
Wow.
got the what do you call that thing? The thing that goes like this. It's got the circle, the two commas hugging each other, whatever it's called. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, and that one's pretty cool too. So, well, that comma thing, never mind.
Nick's flashing.
And so it's really cool.
The yin and yang.
The yin and yang.
There you go. That's the
Oh.
one. This is how foolish I am. Yeah, that thing.
Commas
And it's
love
really
each
cool.
other
It's-
very much. They give each other a special hug.
That's the weirdest description of the yin yang I've ever heard, bro.
And
so
then
yeah,
someone
it's
makes
really
it
cool.
a
I mean,
chapter token.
That's right.
Heyo. But and so I've traded chapter tokens, and it's amazing. I mean, when I was high priest of my chapter, that was part of my project, was to create 100 different chapter pennies, and I trade them all the time. I just buy them for the chapter, and I at cost, and I just trade them. It's a wonderful way to spread masonry.
Robert, how about you?
Oh man. The Mark Master degree is cool. I enjoyed that. If we're talking about strictly the Royal Arch chapter, I think my favorite probably was the Holy Royal Arch degree, a 7th degree within that. There's a little bit of mysticism that I really enjoyed into that degree. And to find out the way they do it in Pennsylvania and a few other places after the way I had received it, which when I got it, I really liked it, but they do some really neat ritual over in Pennsylvania. I know that. I don't know where else they do it, but we can't really talk about it. Yeah, I really did enjoy the 7th degree. It was pretty special. I mean, outside of that, and we can go. Are we going to talk about the other couple ones or not?
As far as we should be at least covering. This is a York Rite in general, so that does include
Well, so
council and commandery and all that fun stuff.
well, I mean, if I say my favorite degree out of every degree I've ever seen, is probably the Knight Templar orders. That was the most serious, intense degree ever. Second to that, I really enjoyed. Well, like you guys in Virginia don't have the Cryptic Council; it's all kind of together for you. But for us, I really enjoyed what we would consider, I guess, the 9th degree there. And that was another one of my favorites. I kind of felt like Indiana Jones.
So I actually have a fun little anecdote to go along with that. When I received the orders of the commandery, I was actually given those orders At the same time, it was myself, another member of Herndon Lodge, and the entire Grand Lodge of Grand Line of Croatia. And so they were in town in D.C., and we all received the orders together. The intent was that the Grand Line of Croatia would bestow the order, and then they would take that order and establish it in Croatia. So I assume they took that and established that in their home country. But it was kind of a neat experience. I didn't even plan for that to happen. It just kind of worked out that way, and so that was a neat experience. I don't know how much got lost in translation because I know many of them may not have even spoken English, but hey, it's certainly a memorable degree despite that.
100 years from now, in Croatia, there's going to be a completely different type of masonry that no one will know the origin, and it all started in Virginia.
Pretty much.
And we'll probably be calling them clandestine at that point.
Oh, jeez. All right. So, is it for the ignorant Virginia guy? What's different in your Cryptic Councils that you don't get out of your Royal Arch chapters, etc.?
I don't know.
A purple coat
for me,
instead of a red coat.
yeah, I know. I think it's this really awesome Joker vest that I wear. I actually told him that this year I'm going to be painting my hair green, and I'm already pasty enough. I'm going to show up and I'm going to see what all of them say. But I should say I'm the Grand Chaplain of the Grand Council of Cryptic Masons of Minnesota, and for me, the thing that I really like about having it separated is that you have a different way of focusing on it. I mean, it's one of those that the chapter is very focused on education and completing those lessons that you find in the lodge. So, it's not just the finding of the thing. That's all I can say, I guess. But but it's also the completion of the themes that you find within the lodge. So you've got the faith, hope, and charity concepts, and those are completed within the Royal Arch system, particularly in the Royal Arch degree. The orders focus very much on a Christian concept, of how to get how to become a better, not necessarily Christian, but finding Christian virtues, things like that. But the council is kind of a weird set of degrees. It's just two of them plus an optional, and for me, I've still been struggling to figure out how they fit, what they fit with, and why. I mean, I'm the illustrious master, and I still struggle with, what are we doing here? And so for me, it's one of those that I kind of treat it a little bit like an invitational body in that we focus mostly on the degree work, and I also, want to inject a lot of fun to it. So what we do is table councils and things like that. And so yeah, it's kind of trying to figure out what to do with the weird one, and that's essentially what council functions as, is the weird one. I mean, it's true. I mean, you find a ton of guys and you ask them, well, why do you have a septic Cryptic Council? You just sit there and say, well, why does daylight savings time exist? I don't know.
No, see, there is an answer for that. More dues.
More
Yeah,
dude.
yeah.
Another petition that fell out.
Yeah, you're killing
Yeah.
trees. So I was kind of thinking about this a little bit, and whenever somebody had asked me about, what is the Royal Arch, or Nick was alluding to the Royal Arch being somewhat of a completion of a tale, and I don't know how many people out there read comic books or are into pop culture stuff, but friends of mine who are kind of into that stuff, I hang around a lot of comic book nerds, and a lot of them are Masons, and we all kind of agreed that we felt that the Royal Arch was almost like a comic book called The Killing Joke. You read Batman comics your whole life, and you kind of get the story about the Joker and Batman, but The Killing Joke is a graphic novel that actually gives you a real origin story and completes like all these little. It's like if they said, well, let's look at all the holes and write stories to make all that make sense. And that's really, I think, what the Royal Arch does. And I feel like the Cryptic Council being separate, that feels to me just like the Easter egg bonus features on a DVD. Does that make sense?
Actually, it really does. It's kind of nice because it fills in a lot of gaps. That's really the best way to put it.
Interestingly enough, the one thing I noticed about the Cryptic Council was compared to like Royal Arch and Blue Lodge degrees, the Cryptic Council degrees are rather abbreviated. They're very short, but there's so much symbolism packed into those short degrees. It's really an interesting dichotomy.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, another question before we switch to social media that I have for you guys is, how much fun was your past master degree?
Wow. So, when they told me that we had to have a pass, well, some places don't do the past master degree, correct, Nick?
Yeah.
So, and they
Do
call
you-
it some places have to call it a virtual past master degree, and
That's how it is here.
You're past master by virtue of,
Sure.
sitting in the chair or something like that.
So you said it was like that in Florida one?
Yeah, in Florida it's a virtual past master.
Okay.
so here in Illinois, it's just the past master degree, and it was very weird because they kind of put you in a position of power for a second, and I didn't know how to handle that. It was very weird because at the time I was but a senior steward in my lodge. 5 years later, the master of my lodge, but back then that was a very weird thing. I felt like undeserving. Is this the trick?
Interestingly enough, in Virginia, in the Blue Lodge, all deacons who want to be elected to the position of warden must have the past master degree. They do not have to be a member of the Royal Arch, but they actually have to have like a special conferral of the past master portion of the Royal Arch degrees before they can be elected.
That's funny.
Yeah.
That's
And-
crazy.
And that's to apply some of the lessons you learn in that degree sooner than when you join a chapter.
Well, it was kind of funny when I actually did the past master degree. I was already a master, 3 or 4 months in. So it's like, yeah, gavel, come on, let's go. Are we done with this?
No, see, Nick, it's not teaching you how to be a grumpy past master. It's teaching you the virtues of being a master.
Wow.
On that note, let's switch to social media. Jason, what do we got?
Oh, I've got a zinger, and I'm really, really glad that Joe Vanderstelt and Donnie Dillon brought this up because I think it's something that we need to talk about. And Joe Vanderstelt's question is, how do you square the oath to defend Christianity, which is required to join the commandery, with the non-sectarian obligation in the Blue Lodge? So, a little bit of context here. Allegedly, because I'm not a Knight Templar, in order to join the Knights Templar, you either must be Christian or you must be willing to defend the Christian faith. Would that
Well,
be
even-
an honest
and-
assessment?
Well, and even more so if you look at the Grand Encampment rules, it actually says a firm believer in the Christian religion. Now, I don't know how that actually finds its way back down because, I know a number of Jewish or I even know some Muslim Knights Templar, some Buddhist Knights Templar.
As do I.
And so, it's it's one of those national is not necessarily meeting with local. But to actually get to that, how do you square the two? For me, I don't know. I think it's one of those that you have to look at the fact that within Masonry there were 2 different branches growing at the same time on the same tree. And when Dr. Anderson changed, essentially he changed Masonry by affirming what a number of lodges were doing, which was to open lodges up to all men of any religion except for that religion that all men agree. And then there was another one that was moving, and that was the Baron von Hund side that was saying, well, this is a body of men focused on Christian virtue. And so, for me, it's the best way I can say is that, historical. That's about as good as it gets. Do I think that they should open up the orders to all men without having to worry about this particular, either firm believer in the Christian religion or defend the Christian religion? Sure. I will go on record and say, yeah, I think it should be opened up, because for me, the Order of the Temple is pretty much one of the best Masonic degrees ever conceived and ever written in the history of all Masonry. And that is no joke. I mean,
absolutely.
and,
before I got that degree, Nick, through all the degrees, we all know that there's probably a little bit of joking or whatever that happens before the degree, and that's the only degree. And I've told you guys this before, where my conductor basically told me, "Hey, this is where it's going to get real." And my face, that's not exactly, he used some expletive deleted, but he looked serious, and like I went from smile to straight face, and it was no joke. I mean, it was to me, I have to agree with Nick. You have to open it up, because I feel that it's almost a tragedy that it's not available to everybody, and that brothers out there ask about it all the time. How cool is it? I just don't know if I can make that oath or whatever, because based on their personal beliefs, they don't want to lie and take something they feel they don't deserve or can't have.
You see, that's one of the questions that I wanted to ask Nick or any of the brothers, if you have a belief on this. For a brother that's watching the show or listening to the program, and they haven't made a decision whether to join the York Rite or the Scottish Rite, and they're kind of there, in the balance, but they're not of the Christian faith. Would that be hands down, okay, then forget about it, go the Scottish Rite route? Or would you say, you can still go ahead?
Yeah, it depends on where you are in your journey. Like, the reason I went York Rite first, and literally this is how I got my start. I wanted to dip my toe in this whole appendant body thing. And the one thing that the York Rite has that's completely different than the Scottish Rite is that you can dip your toe in. You can just join the chapter, see if you're really into this. If you're not, you just kind of just fade away. But you can dip your toe and find out. The Scottish Rite, you're in and you're in. You're gonna get all 32nd. You're gonna get to the 32nd degree. You're gonna come back, reunions, things like that. I mean, it's a full system, right?
It depends on the level of involvement of the particular chapter. Like, my chapter is so small, you can't dip your toe in. If you join, you're an officer the next day.
Yeah. Oh. Well, I guess I should tell you the funny story of the day I became high priest. But what happened was, I had just joined, and chapters at that time were struggling. I mean, they still kind of are, but luckily my chapter has gotten huge numbers. But when I was first starting out, I had to miss one meeting, and this is a lesson to all of you. Do not miss a meeting ever. Never miss a meeting. I foolishly missed the election night. All of a sudden, I get a phone call, and I'm literally hauling a table out of JCPenney's, trying to load it into my car, actually into the truck. And I get a phone call. I'm like ignoring it. I'm like, no, I got this 100-pound table. I got to get in this. All of a sudden, I listen to the message, and they say, Nick, we're going to be giving you a spot. Now, if you call us in 5 minutes and you're not cool with it, we're going to be voting in 5 minutes. But otherwise, we'll just see you next month. I get in there, clap, 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 clap. Congratulations, excellent high priest. It's like nice.
And
I mean, luckily I'd been in East, so.
And the excellent high priest is the worshipful master of the chapter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I jumped every chair.
Good up. Good job. Way to take one for the team.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, and I spent 2 years in that chair, so.
Oh.
Oh, jeez. Now, I will say that a lot of the degrees in Masonry are influenced by other religious sets. So we've talked a little bit about the symbolism and the influences of mystery schools and religious philosophies, right? So you could even say that even the symbolic degrees, the Blue Lodge degrees, have influences from Thomas Aquinas, St. Thomas Aquinas, who's looked at virtue ethics, right? So that is, you could argue, a Christian thing, but even then, he stole some of those things from Plato, I believe. So all these things are tied together, and just because it comes from a Christian source may or may not mean that the lesson is skewed because of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right,
So
what else?
let's shift gears here, John, and talk a little bit about dues. As we had David Weatherby mention that he just petitioned for the chapter council and commandery, and it's about $250 for all those degrees in Texas. He's just asking if we think that's prohibitive, but I think it's a better idea to get a sense for what exactly the dues are for the York Rite in relation, perhaps, to the Scottish Rite and Blue Lodge.
Mm.
For me, I paid less in dues for the York Rite bodies than I did for my lodge, my Blue Lodge, or the Scottish Rite.
Yep.
In dues alone.
So
Now,
if I could just say, my Blue Lodge is 60, my Royal Arch is 35, my Cryptic Council is 15, and my Scottish Rite is 80, and my AMD is 30 a year. So the dues are pretty low on in Illinois, in the northeastern district up here, but down in Texas, man, I know brother Joshua Huckabee got his orders last year, I think, and he said it was a pretty big to do down there. So you get what you pay for, I think.
The way I see it, if you're going to charge $500 for a petition fee for the operatives, an organization, loosely affiliated with the York Rite, I mean, I don't have any heartburn. I'll go on record saying I don't have any heartburn over $35 worth of dues for Royal Arch a year.
Yeah, definitely not. What you get, it's the completion of a story for $35.
Right. So the way I look at it, joining any appendant body is that investment worth the additional light that you're seeking, right? So I think I've said on record here a couple times that I'm not as active in the appendant concordant bodies as I'd like to be, but I keep paying my dues because I learned so much from those degrees, and I contemplate those degrees a lot. And so just because I'm not there wearing my red jacket and just doing the business stuff, that I still find value in being a member of that system, that I really got a lot out of the lessons and symbols in those degrees. So to me, it was worth it. I don't remember off the top of my head what I paid, but again, to me, the dues are reasonable and are worth keeping up my good standing status in order to keep and respect those degrees.
Yeah, I would go and say my Blue Lodge could be $1,000 a year. I'd find a way to pay it. My Royal Arch, I don't know. I mean, Blue Lodge for me comes first, right? So I mean, if I had to say a max amount, I mean, I'd pay for something. I think a lot of those things have a higher value than definitely what they're charging. So definitely worth it.
Yeah, and you might see it as a big chunk of change on the 27th of December. But if you look at the big picture, you're not even paying $1 a day, not even.
Yeah.
So you just don't wait till November to start gathering the money. Put a buck in a little bucket.
Now, of course, the one
Every
cost
day.
prohibitive section of the York Rite, though, is the Knights Templar, because
Uniform.
sadly, it's a uniform. Yeah, and if you enjoy the HMS Pinafore as much as I do, you will enjoy the uniform. Luckily, my own commandery did not go with the ostrich, and it did not go with the cap and mantle, which is kind of interesting. We went with the Class A, and I'll see if I can find a picture of it. But the thing is it's very cost prohibitive.
That's only if you take office, though. Because
Yeah.
for us here in Illinois, it's just a black suit, white shirt, and an apron.
Yeah.
Unless you're an officer.
Yeah.
And then you got to be like, looking like a 32nd degree Scottish Rite Mason.
Yeah.
You do get a sword, though, in Commandery, which I know makes Nick really happy.
Oh, I've got it right
and
here.
Is it that time? Is it that time?
Oh yeah.
Are we pulling our cards?
Someone let Nick around the sharp object.
Oh,
I know. I gotta cut some letters open.
I got mine
man.
too.
Oh, goodness.
Nice.
And mine has
Yep.
my.
And these. Ooh.
These might as well be lightsabers the way these guys are playing with them.
That's right.
I don't know.
I'll show you mine. If you show me yours, Nick.
Oh, gosh.
For those of you who are listening to the podcast,
We're geeking out on swords.
yeah, too bad. Watch the video.
Oh, jeez.
We're showing.
Go to
our-
youtube.com/Masonic Roundtable.
That's all.
Boys, put your swords away.
Okay,
How
so
could you
now
not want
that we're done playing show and tell with sharp pointing objects, there's a question from our buddy Pete Wasco, and we're not trying to get into like a York Rite versus Scottish Rite thing, but he says which rite would you actually suggest for a young Master Mason to join first once he has put some time into the Blue Lodge? What might he benefit from joining one before the other? And I'll take a stab, at this opening up. I think it really depends on what you're interested in. If you're interested in themes of morality and mysticism, then I would say Scottish Rite is a great place to go. If you're more of a historian and you want to perhaps bridge the gap branding and between the Blue Lodge and fill in some of the gaps of the Blue Lodge or supposed gaps. I think traveling into the York Rite is a good place to go, but don't be too concerned with how quickly you get there, because there's a whole lot of stuff to learn and master in the Blue Lodge first.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think for some people, it's going to be a matter of is the Royal Arch where you meet, is it going to be closer to you than the Scottish Rite? For some people, it's going to boil down to that. Like for me, now that I've gone through both, I don't regret doing it the way that I did it. I went through the Scottish Rite 2 years after joining Masonry, and then I waited a few years before joining York Rite. But if I would have done it the other way around, I would have been equally as happy.
Cool.
So
I think for me, I look at two things, and one of them could be, I guess, a flow chart, right? Do you want to join the Scottish Rite? And then it would come down to a yes or no, but some other questions in between. And I feel that if you want to, somebody say, do you want to join York or Scottish Rite? And I would say, where do you live? And what are you into? If somebody is into historical stuff, my mentor told me, you're into history, you like to fill in the gaps, join the York Rite. That's what I did a year and a half after becoming a Master Mason. Newer information for me, I guess I would say something like, if you live in the southern jurisdiction, go ahead and join the Scottish Rite first. because the 7th and the 13th degree, pretty much the same. A lot of the same stories happen in both of them. If you live in the northern jurisdiction and you're kind of into esoterics or mysticism, I kind of feel like the York Rite has that, because the northern Masonic jurisdiction isn't as, I guess, esoteric as that. And the Scottish Rite in the southern jurisdiction has a very distinct York Rite flavor. It is not like that up here in the Scottish Rite.
Interesting.
So that's kind of my take on it, and to also say that if you join the York Rite up here, my experience has been if you join the York Rite, you're going to get involved. That's it. There's not really a question about it. If you join the Scottish Rite up here, here's your level of involvement. You go to an event if you want to. You go to the reunion if you want to. There's 2 a year. It's very laid back. There's enough officers. There's enough everything to go around. We don't, I'm not getting, hey, we need a guy for the 17th degree. Well, sorry, I can't do that.
Yeah. And for me, I think it depends on, if you're testing something out, if you're trying and seeing. I mean, it's true. I mean, I was yanked right into being an officer in the chapter and all that stuff. But, in terms of like, if you just want to get lodge, do some offices, and then join into the chapter, then you've essentially just done everything that you would have done if you were an English Mason, or a Scottish Mason, or even an Irish Mason. You're gonna go through, you're gonna wait the required time, and then you're gonna get your Royal Arch, and then you're done. Scottish Rite, is a really interesting set of degrees, and I think it is one of those that once you're done, if you do chapter first, that's cool. But if you don't, Scottish Rite is true. I mean, if you're in the southern jurisdiction, you're getting a lot of the same degrees. It makes sense because Albert Pike was the York Rite Mason first,
Yep.
and a lot of the ideas came in that way. So, it makes perfect sense. For me, I think I like the idea that I have a chapter dues card and a commandery dues card and a Royal Order of Scotland dues card, and I can just go out to wherever in England or Scotland or even Canada and just, boom, I'm right there. But, I mean, the Scottish Rite is very different outside of the United States.
Yes.
Our Scottish Rite, yeah. It's called the Rose Croix, and it's very different. You'd have to look it up, but it's not the same.
Cool. All right, Jason, we might have time for one more and then start to wrap up.
Actually, no, I think that's about it.
Okay.
So we're good to go.
On that note, let's let Juan lead us home.
All right. I am very young in this journey. There's a ton that I have to learn from Nick and from John and from Robert and from Jason. So today I was mostly an audience member. But, I enjoyed going through the degrees. I most definitely have to go back and see everything once again and participate in a few of them. And, for those of you who are undecisive, hopefully we were able to help you a little bit. If not, keep on asking questions and figure it out. Some of those questions can be posted on our Facebook page. Go to facebook.com/Masonic Roundtable, right? The Masonic Roundtable?
The Masonic Roundtable.
The Masonic Roundtable. And, even if we don't have an answer, we'll find one for you. Or I'll make one up.
Nice.
Probably the latter.
Yeah. All right, so you can listen to the latest episode of The Winding Stairs, episode 27. And it was an interview with Brother Joseph Wages, the editor for the latest book about the Illuminati. It was a very good conversation. The book, as illustrated by Brother Jason Richards, is The Secret School of Wisdom. And it is a great book. I'm enjoying it. It's been very interesting. But anyway, listen to the episode. Some cool stuff. We dispel some of the myths about that order. So go to thewindingstairs.com and listen to it there.
Check it out.
Awesome.
Thank you, Juan.
Yep.
Let's move to Robert Johnson.
All right. So, thanks to everybody who's listening to the show. I know it's been a couple weeks since I was on, and apologize for the absence. I just want to say that thanks to Brother Jason Richards and Brother Juan Sepulveda, Whence Came You pins are going to be coming back out again. They'll be brass pins. They're going to be made right here in the USA. So listen to WCY Podcast, Whence Came You, for more details on that as it comes out. I want to say thanks to Brother Steve Harrison, who gave me a bunch of his copies of his book, Tales from the Craft. It's a phenomenal book, and I think we're going to end up selling those on Whence Came You's website, WCYpodcast.com. And I wanted to say that we have a walk on May 16th for the Chicago Dyslexia Center. And we're raising money now. You can go to walkfordyslexia.org. And if you want, go to sponsor, and you can click Waukegan78. We're a team, so you can sponsor our individual team if you want. And I would appreciate that. And thanks so much again. And I have to say, again, really quickly, I listened to Kabbalah with Eric Diamond. And Eric, it was awesome. If you're listening, it was great. And I'm going to quote you on my out right now, and that is, to quote Brother Eric Diamond, "Go to Lodge." That was so. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you, Robert.
Yep. Thank you.
And Jason.
Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us tonight. Thanks for continuing to watch us and continuing to listen to us on iTunes and Stitcher and wherever you might be hearing us. We have some new TMR pins that are coming in within a week or two. So, yes, we are just about out, if not almost completely out of our original design run. You can still order them, don't worry. But the second design run is going to be hitting here either this week or next week, and they are going to be very much the same, but just a tiny bit different. So you'll be able to tell the difference pretty distinctly between the two runs. So it'll be cool. We'll unveil them when we actually get them in, and then we will start hitting those full time. Outside of that, thanks for joining us again. Keep interacting with us on Facebook and social media. I really appreciate that. It gives me something to do for social media time. It's really lame when John says, "Hey Jason, what's going on social media?" I'm like, nothing.
Let me make up some questions on the spot.
Yes. Well, John Smith from Waukegan Lodge in Illinois asked us. No, so it's great having the comments back and forth and the running commentary as the show goes on. So thank you all so much, and I will send it back to you, John.
All right. I think Nick has been our resident expert for tonight. So Nick.
Oh boy, I hope not. I made it way more complicated than it needed to be. So I'll make it super simple for everybody. The York Rite is a collection of 3 bodies that y'all can join. There you go. It's just like the Scottish Rite. If you pay, blank me, pay, or however that goes, right? The thing is, I really enjoy the York Rite in terms of it's a very interactive set of degrees. You essentially are partaking and participating in the ritual work. I particularly liked the chapter just because it was the first body that I'd ever joined that had something other than the first 3 degrees, because for almost 6 years I was pretty much just a Blue Lodge guy, and so I didn't know that there was such a thing as this world outside, and it was very eye-opening, especially that first day with the Mark Master. It was a very interesting set of degrees. It's very operative. So yeah, but I think Robert has the best advice in terms of what to do. In terms of if you should join, what to join. I know you're the best. But and then I'm going to steal some advice from Jason Mitchell, a buddy of mine who's also been on the show, who said, at the end of the day, which rite is right for you? Both. And so join them all. Join all the things.
Gotta collect them all.
Yeah, exactly. Polka degrees.
Just turn your wallet upside down. Shake it out.
Honestly, I
Instead
have
of
because
in your
it's a wallet.
Nick,
Oh,
Nick doesn't have kids in his wallet. He unfolds and it's dues cards.
Nice.
I actually know a guy who has 30 dues cards of 30 different things, and he just goes like this, boop, and he's like, "Oh, I'm so proud of this one. Oh, look at how beautiful he is." But
That's the big guy
anyway.
that hasn't had a dinner at home since 1999.
Yeah. Oh man, we should have had that meme like totally ready. For me, I just love the York Rite. It's very interactive and it's fun. So you can find me at my blog, millennialfreemason.com. I've been writing every week. We had a special guest article. It was Homosexuality and Freemasonry by a pen name of a anonymous writer, Ye Grande. So yeah, it was a really interesting article. And so if you have anything you want me to publish that you think is kind of controversial, most of the time I'm willing to do that. So send it over. And I'd also like to thank every single person, all you anonymous folks who donated to my polar plunge. I raised $1,000 for Special Olympics. It was because of you guys. So I did jump into the freezing water, and it was flippin' freezing. Like,
Pics or it didn't happen.
yeah, they're forthcoming. Supposedly somebody took pictures, and you're gonna love it because the one lady said, "Is your name Jesus?" And I said, "What's that?" Because you pretty much just walked on that water the whole way. Yeah, it was pretty cold. It was fun though. Yeah, it was a great time, and I don't know, but it was all because of you guys. So I just want to say thank you, and yeah, back to you, John.
All right. I think the rest of you have covered everything else. So, yay, York Rite. Thanks for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good night.